A lot of times when we talk about Texas rigs, when I talk about Texas rigs, I'm talking about the plastic that is on the back of your Texas rig. And we're talking about whether you're using a big worm or a D-bomb style bait or a crawl, whatever it may be. But one thing, like I said, that I think is kind of glossed over from time to time is your weight and how you go about selecting the right weight for the application that you're fishing. Now, I have 3 really important tips that I think every angler should know about the weights that they are selecting. So stay tuned, it's gonna be a good one. Tip number 1, you should know what your weight is made out of. Now, for a lot of anglers, you already know this, but if you are just getting into bass fishing, to me, there are really 2 different materials that a lot of the weights that we use are made of. Now, one is your standard lead, and the other one is tungsten. Now, there's also weights that are made out of like brass. I've never really fished those, so I'm not gonna talk about those at all. Now, if you're just getting into bass fishing, you may look at a tungsten weight and be like, why would I ever buy that thing? Because it's like 5 times the cost of your standard lead weight. But in my opinion, I don't fish with any lead weights anymore. It's all tungsten. Now, the biggest thing that you should know when it comes to tungsten versus lead is that tungsten is more dense and it is harder than lead. Now, because tungsten's more dense than lead, if you look at a lead weight and a tungsten weight that are both, we'll say, 3/8 of an ounce, the tungsten weight is about half, maybe a third of the size of that lead weight. One of the main advantages of having a smaller weight, when a fish goes to grab onto that bait, you are more likely to hook that fish with a smaller weight versus a larger weight. Now, tungsten, like I said, is also harder than lead. And the biggest thing that helps you with is feeling down there on the bottom. It is more sensitive. So when you make a long cast and you're dragging a Texas rig across the bottom, because that weight is dense, it translates well into what you're feeling. You can tell whether you're fishing that around wood or rock or grass. And sometimes when you're using a soft lead weight, it is harder to feel what is down there on the bottom. Now, the thing that does suck about tungsten is that it is a lot higher priced than your standard lead weight. But that actually brings me to a really special offer that I have from today's sponsor, which is Omnia Fishing. For today only, if you are watching this video when this video comes out, you can get Woo tungsten weights at Omnia for 40% off, almost half off. So if you guys want to take advantage of this offer and pick up some new tungsten weights, I'm going to leave a link down below for all the Woo tungsten weights that you can get 40% off. Just click those links and it greatly helps support the Bass Fishing HQ channel. Now, the second thing when it comes to your weights that you should really understand is a rate of fall. To me, this may be one of the most important things about your Texas rig is the rate of fall. About 90-95% of the time that you fish a Texas rig, a bass is going to hit that bait on the fall. Maybe it's on the initial fall, you cast it out, and as that bait is falling, that's when the bass hits it, or maybe you hop it off the bottom and the bass hits it on the way down. Now, that rate of fall can be very important. Sometimes bass get very specific on how fast or slow they want a bait. Now, let's be real honest. There are days when you go out there and you go fishing, you could be fishing with a couple of buddies and you're all using different weight sizes with all different rates of fall, and you guys are all catching bass really equally. But I have started to see more times than not that getting the right rate of fall with your bait, selecting the right size weight, can drastically help you to get a lot more bites. Now, what I have seen most of the time out there fishing is that the lightest weight that you can get away with, the more bites that you are going to get. This is not always the case, and I'm about to talk about that, but that's what I've seen a lot of times when I'm out there fishing. The lightest weight that you can get away with, the more bites you are going to get. Now, a lot of times in the summer, specifically in the summer, I will actually up the size of my weights. And the reason that I up the size of my weights is because I want that bait to fall really fast past the bass, and I want to cause a reaction strike from the bass. So there are times where I may be fishing down the bank and I might be flipping and pitching into wood cover and I could get away with a 1/4 ounce weight, but actually stepping up to a 1/2 ounce or a 3/4 ounce and really making that bait fall quickly in front of that fish causes a reaction strike that 1/4 ounce weight will not. Now, although that is what I have typically seen, the fact of the matter is that this is a very situational thing. So what I suggest doing is that if you happen to get on a bite where you are catching fish on a Texas rig, either have a couple of different rods rigged up with the same bait but with different size weights, or fish with a buddy who can use a different size weight. And either by yourself or together, you can kind of figure out the size of weight that you need that gives you the right rate of fall that the bass are really responding to. It's always kind of an experiment out there, but that's just something that you can always try. Now, the third tip when it comes to your weight actually involves whether you peg the weight or not. Now, if you don't know what I mean by pegging a weight, this simply means when I use something like a bobber stop or a toothpick to keep the weight in place on my line. That is known as pegging your weight. Now, pegging your weight can be extremely advantageous when you're fishing around a lot of cover. If you're fishing around a lot of grass, a lot of brush in the water, pegging that weight will keep that plastic with the weight, which really allows you to fish effectively through that cover. This is also a lot of times a must if you are fishing really thick matted vegetation, which is one of my favorite ways to go out there and catch bass. In order to actually get that plastic through the roof of that mat, you have to peg that weight so that the weight drags that plastic through that roof. Now, with that being said, kind of like what I talked about with the size of the weight that you are using, I think that if you can get away with not pegging your weight, you are going to get a lot more bites. So when I go out there and go fishing, I always start with a weight that is not pegged to my bait. It really allows your plastic to look a little bit more natural as it is coming through the water. It's not always diving down with the weight. And I truly believe that you will get a lot more bites out there if you do not peg the weight. Like I said, talking about weights is not sexy, but I think that it is really important. Now, if you guys have never punched using a really big weight to punch through matted cover like I talked about a minute ago, I'm gonna leave a link for a video where I went and I punched up a lot of bass. It's one of my favorite techniques to catch fish, and you can catch a lot of big fish doing it. So if you guys enjoyed this video, you'll like this one. Subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out Woo Tungsten, and I'll see you in the next one.